Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Hope you guys are doing well.
And welcome back.
So, guys, I've been watching closely the military situation going on out there, as things are very, very tense and very, very tight. And Cindy and I are both kind of getting the same visions, the same impressions of what's going on.
Yeah, the same vibes, the same kind of tension out there that things are just really on a precipice of big change.
Yeah, and the reality that things could really kick off at any time. Now, we don't want to push a quote unquote negative timeline, but then at the same time, isn't it good to be informed? Because there's always people that will say, why all the focus on all the negativity? Well, and then again, I'll say, well, don't you want me to tell you if there's a truck, coming bearing down straight at you and you don't see it because you have your Bluetooth on?
Right.
You can't hear it.
It's so true. There's a difference between spreading fear and giving information.
Exactly. It's all about preparedness and not being caught off guard when things happen.
And that's something that they're masters at, is catching people off guard.
So the U.S. and Israel submarines surface in the Gulf to reinforce a warning to Tehran, and we talked about it. And interestingly enough, the U.S. kind of telegraphed that they're sending a sub, over there to send a signal because it's been a year anniversary since the killing of Soleimani. So that was interesting because it was a telegraphed move. Basically just saying, don't think about any sort of reprisals.
Right, that's concerning.
So in a coordinated warning to Iran, USS Georgia cruise missile submarine crossed the Strait of Hormuz on Monday, December 21st, joining Israeli submarine reported to have reached the Gulf after crossing through the Suez Canal. The Georgia's arrival was announced by the U.S. Navy, along with detailed pictures of the submarine, which can carry 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles and 66 Special Forces soldiers, and is escorted by the cruisers, the USS Port Royal and the USS Philippine Sea. This force demonstrates the United States' commitment to regional partners and maritime security with a full spectrum of capabilities to remain ready to defend against any threat at any time, the Navy warned.
Wow, I don't like that at all.
No, and, I'm going to give you this, and I talked about this on the first channel, Evolutionary, previously, made several videos about this. There was, back in 2005, and you could see who's quoting this, Lin and Wood. So it's very interesting that he is quoting this right now. In December of 2005, there was a general, Chi Hao Tian, General Qi, right, Vice Chairman of China's Military Commission. And I'll give you guys a link so you can read the whole thing, but basically saying he was talking about how China will not be able to feed their people at a certain point in time when they hit a certain population, which they have hit now. They have over 1.3 billion people. And he said they would be faced with somehow having to have that population reduced in half in order to keep China sustainable with the food production. Or they would have to have the farmland in Australia, Canada, or the U.S. Either or scenario. Also, interesting enough, back in 2005, spoke of they would not do a direct confrontation first. There would be a biological component that would have to be released first to soften things up. And this is back in 2005, so this is a long time ago. And I first reported on this, I think, about a year ago, right around when everything was starting. And then had trouble finding that same link again. This link is a little bit smaller. It's just quoting a couple excerpts. But again, reiterating that pretty chilling speech that he gave back in 2005.
I know, and I wish we could be more forward about it, but really, just showing this little bit scares me, kind of.
Yeah, and then we see this out of The Guardian. Russia and China fly joint bomber patrol over the Pacific. There were some comments where people were saying, it's not Russia, it's China. but they're missing the bigger picture. Those two work as a unit, because they've done many joint patrols together. They've been growing together closer and closer. So here you see Russia and China flying together over the Pacific. Mission involving 2 Russian and 4 Chinese aircraft signals stronger military ties between Moscow and Beijing. And they've done a lot of coordinated war games together. And then also, my visions have always been both of them together. They're working as a unit. And again, they're working as a unit at the behest of the real powers behind the scenes. So, there again, they themselves are still pawns in this, because there's much more going on. It's much more coordinated, and it won't just be Russia and China. There'll be at least a half a dozen other countries to more than that, more than likely, that would be working with them,
Yeah, I mean, this is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, so it's so interesting. We get it all the time, people get divided because they're not looking at the whole story. And so, just like, we had one party pointing to Russia, the other party pointing to China. And just like, aliens, extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, demons, it's not either or. It's all of the above. All of the above is going on. And it will be both of them together along with others.
Yeah, remember the bigger picture. I think that's kind of the name of the game when it comes to this, is always when you're pointing a finger at one thing, realize that there's other things there with that one thing, always.
And we see Japan, Russia military says Japan scrambled F-15 jets to escort this joint Russian-Chinese patrol. So, again, everything is getting ratcheted up. Japan is buying weaponry at an extremely fast pace because they can feel what's coming, and Japan's tiny compared to China. China dwarfs Japan, 1.3 billion people to 120-something million people. And China would immediately, in my opinion, take over Taiwan at any opportunity. And here you see The Guardian. This was from a year ago. You have a joint Russian and Chinese air patrol, heightened tensions in the Korean peninsula. And they're working together under the auspices of the true powers that be. And I think sometimes people lose the perspective. Like, they think there is just a deep S, you understand, in this country that's working with perhaps foreign entities, but it's bigger than that.
Yeah, it is. It's much bigger than that. It's a realization that ultimately, there's 2 wings of the same dirty bird everywhere you look. Everywhere you look. And to think anything different is that's where they get you, and that's where they try to separate you and distance us from each other and get us to fight and argue, saying, no, this is right, no, that's right, when ultimately we have to realize it's all kind of like one thing and just many different dirty branches.
So excuse me, guys, I'm losing my voice here. So there is basically this global force that has been controlling the goings on the planet. Really, things are of a corporate nature, and the countries themselves are not really the boundaries of what's going on. Things are much, much more entangled than that. They use the countries to create, issues, and again, also kind of police each other in so many ways, create diversions for what's really going on. But it's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than just like one particular country. It's a global thing that's going on. It's a global system. So, this order that's been talked about and is manifesting, really all it is just an outward acknowledgement of what's been going on, all along.
Right. And I mean, look at things on a smaller scale. They even have us policing each other. They have people calling the cops on other people because they're not wearing a mask. And you just scale this up bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's how they hold control. And it's a tight control too, because the consequences of doing certain things are so great. If somebody knows someone else is doing something they shouldn't, well, they could get in trouble too. So they go ahead and tattle on them, and this is how it goes, up and up and up.
Yeah, what we saw in 1930s with Germany, again, we're seeing out in the open, but it still doesn't mean that there's not these powers that are out there controlling and manipulating everything. So, there's a lot of different levels to this going on, and you see Russia's helping China build a missile defense system, so says Putin. Days after Beijing unveils state-of-the-art missiles, Moscow reveals plan that would radically enhance China's defensive capability. This has been going on. This is a year ago, over a year ago. And, we do have new things going on. 53 minutes ago, Russia announces travel bans against EU officials in response to Navalny sanctions. Russia has announced it's hitting several European Union representatives with a tit-for-tat sanctions in response to those imposed by the bloc over the poisoning of the opposition leader. And then we also see the solar winds hack hit office home to top Treasury Department officials. And Mnuchin was talking about this. So, they basically got their emails. Some of the top officials in the U.S. Treasury were talking about them telegraphing that perhaps in the next hack, they could shut off the utilities, like the landlord, right? One of the things that you see, and we're going to look at comparing different firepower as well. Something's been going on, because I've been watching stats like that for years, and there's been a massive buildup. At least they're showing a massive buildup. And again, House of Cards, everything's an illusion so much, but still it doesn't mean that they don't have real plans on how they're going to execute some things. Russia sends 300 military instructors to Central African Republic, as we're talking about controlling these food belts that are going to be emerging. And meanwhile, U.S. testing its Thor drone-killing microwave weapon in Africa at the same time. And we talked about how, there's troops right there in northeast Syria from like all these different countries. And now we have more ships heading over that way. It does feel like things can go hot at any time. So this is global firepower. And you see blue is China for whatever reason, and red is U.S. That's kind of curious, isn't it? Why would they choose to do it that way? You would think they would do it the other way. Well, as far as military rankings of strength, the U.S. is still ranked number 1 overall, Russia 2, and China 3. But you see here the Chinese fleet, and this is not including those tiny little, fishing boats that might be actually, well, we know they've been militarized. So you got 777 ships in the Chinese Navy and 490 in the U.S. Navy. So, they have been working very fast. They have 74 submarines compared to the U.S.'s 66. You put them with Russian, again, Russia blue, U.S. Red. Russia's got more ships than we do now, too. So they have been modernizing and adding. And you got to really wonder where our money's been going, because, again, you could combine Russia and China's expenses for what they've spent on the military, and it's not a third of what the U.S. has spent. Or right about a third. At least that's what they say. But, of course, things work differently. In those type of situations, you get more for your money in China and Russia, because it's basically in some ways slave labor going on. It's what the party says they're going to pay, and meanwhile in the U.S., so many corporations are getting fat off of U.S. money, which is ultimately taxpayer money. So the Russians have 603 vessels to our 490, and they have 62 subs. We have 66 subs. when you put their combined fleets together, it's much more than ours. And so that's interesting. And I don't think it would just be those countries, like I was saying. I think that you're going to have others. I think you would have Pakistan and North Korea there as well. I think you'll have Cuba and Venezuela. Yes, they're tiny, but still. When I was getting those visions of Florida being invaded, most definitely there were Latin American troops there too. And it felt like they were coming over from Cuba. And again, that's been ongoing for a long time. Then when you put the manpower together, now the one thing the U.S. would do is rule the skies. And you can see the U.S. has more tanks than China, but Russia has more tanks than the U.S. Then you put in the other armored vehicles as well. But warfare's changing too. The tank is getting to be antiquated because of drones. Drones can take them out like nothing. And we've seen that. We saw that in Azerbaijan and Armenia with their fighting. It's just, it's warfare from above. It's drones. And we will see more things coming out that we've never even probably thought of. But when you put the manpower part into it, China has 1.3 billion people, which is, it's an immense military that they could put out there. The other thing, look at the U.S. financials, external debt. China has so little external debt. Look at this external debt for the U.S. And China has been buying up U.S. land, U.S. food production, the poultry and chicken and pork farms. They own Smithfields, and they've been buying up things in droves that has not gone totally unwatched.
Yeah, so we have more and more chess pieces going into play for them to make a bigger move. And it's just, it's getting magnified more and more when it comes to the emotion and the action and the reactions of what's happening. It's just incredible to watch. Very concerning.
I mean, look at the financials. This is Russia. Look at Russia's debt compared to our debt. And look at their foreign reserves compared to our foreign reserves. It's the same thing with China. Basically this country has been totally sold out. It's been the politicians and part of the programming that's going on and the purpose behind it. It's it's sad and tragic.
Yeah, I know. And they're just, kind of making deals in the back door to make sure that they're okay, make sure their pockets are lined and padded, and then we're going to be out on our own.
Yeah, when the eviction notice comes, because that's basically kind of what this is in so many ways. And meanwhile, we see the AP U.S. deaths in 2020 top 3 million, by far the most ever counted. They even say going all the way back to 1918 and World War I. Now, again, do we believe the stats? Do we believe in carbon emissions, causing everything that's going on in the world? No. Stats could be twisted, most definitely. But again, this has an influence on people's constructs and what's in their mind.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
So guys, we want to be always light and positive and cheery, but at the same time, you have to recognize what's going on and again, send out prayers and intentions for the best, but recognize, recognize when there's a wolf outside the door, and especially when the door has been left ajar.
Yeah. And practice that Buddhist detachment.
Yeah. So thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. As always, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.